Really good to see such a good turnout today. If you're here, then like me, you are perhaps feeling really disillusioned with our political class because the last 2 years in particular, we've seen how they have failed us quite spectacularly. And yes, I am talking about the week-on-week rise in our shopping bills and the cost of living more broadly, but I'm also referring to something that I think has been transformative in our understanding of power and how it functions. The last 2 years and more of genocide in Gaza, I think have lifted the veil on the hypocrisy of our ruling class. They have lectured us repeatedly about the sacred international rules-based order, yet what we have learned is that this supposed order only applies to uphold a white Western world order, and it excludes any of those, any people, any nation outside of that orbit. When Luton Independent launched our campaign last year, we were dismissed, we were ridiculed for campaigning on one issue, on Gaza. Personally, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that as a purpose. I think we were right to do whatever we could to prevent a genocide. But we did argue then, as we continue to argue today, that Gaza is the litmus test. That their response to Gaza, what they were willing to do to populations over there, is a stark warning of what they were willing to do to us right here. And sadly, we've seen that borne out in just, in stark ways over the last year. Attacks on pensioners, children living in poverty, people with disabilities, alongside the black-sliding of democratic values, the curtailment of the right to protest, a fundamental right to object, to be loud, to be inconvenient and visible is being chipped away at, and they're only just getting started. Irony was not dead that day when we saw both of our local MPs vote to prescribe Palestine action on the very same day that they stood and posed for photographs in the Palace of Westminster wearing sashes to celebrate the suffragettes. Yeah. So in Britain today, we celebrate the right to protest as long as it's safely tucked away in a history book. But the minute that we take that passion and put it to work in the here and now, we're met with the full force of the establishment. But I think they have fundamentally miscalculated. And we're here today because we reject their politics of division and of economic cruelty. We're here to talk about what we want from our politicians. And I think what we want is authenticity. I think we want accountability. I think we want the courage to prioritise people over personal gain and to put the interests of our communities over their careers. And with that in mind, I'm thrilled, I'll say, to introduce our first speaker, who sought to do just this last July when he stood as the independent candidate for Luton South. So many of you, he'll hate me for saying this, but this is why I'm saying it actually. Many of you will know him through his appearances on 24 Hours in police custody, but he's been a committed community activist for many, many years before that, undertaking pro bono work, including actions against the police, and has campaigned in this regard with the organisation Luton for Justice, for cases such as that of Leon Briggs and Farouk Ali against Bedfordshire Police. He also supported the family of Shukri Abdi, and if you remember, Shukri was a young Somali refugee whose death in 2019 sparked widespread concern over possible racism and Islamophobia in the way that her case was handled. Ladies and gentlemen, Attiq Malik.
Why are we here? This is a question. Why are we here? We are here because after the World War, this country was on its knees. This country begged our people from the West Indies, from Africa, from the Indian subcontinent to come here and rebuild it. We are here because after the World War, Britain decided it could give away land. It could give away the land of the Palestinians. We are here because for the decades that followed, our communities in this country worked their backsides off, contributed to this country, built this country, and yet till today, they are scapegoated for everything, treated as a suspect community, given no respect, told to go back home, blamed for every problem in this country. That's why we're here. We are here because for decades after the war, the Palestinians have suffered a genocide, racism, apartheid, at the hands of colonialism and imperialism. All of this led us into the elections last year. And at the elections last year, we saw a movement across the country of people saying enough is enough. We saw a movement which led to many independents standing. Some won, some took a lot of votes. But either way, a strong message was sent to the establishment, a strong message was sent to the incoming government. A warning shot was given that we are not going to entertain this. We are not going to entertain racist narratives. We are not going to entertain the facilitation, the encouragement, the overlooking, the support of a genocide. We are not going to allow our children in this country to go hungry and for the welfare state to be dismantled and privatized. We give you one chance, and if you don't deliver, we will take over. That was the message that was sent out. And so what's happened since? Where have we got to today? Well, we've seen reform on the rise. We've seen the racists on the street chanting openly. We've seen the media pushing racist narratives. We've seen the Labour Party, the party in power, pandering to the far right, supporting their racist narratives, not just in this country, but internationally, teaming up with the likes of Trump, Netanyahu. And the genocide has escalated. It hasn't stopped. It's got worse and worse. So nothing's changed. Things on every level have continued to get worse. And during that process, we've seen the emergence of another group of people pushing, a group of people saying that we need our own party, a people party, and at the moment it's being called your party. And we're fortunate enough here today to have not just a representative of the Your Party, but a founding member who can speak as to what the vision is, what is it about, how it's going to be a voice for our communities, for our people, how it's going to be different from the Conservatives and the Labours of this world. And what do I say about that? My position is this: our communities have been led for too long. For too long we've been told, shut up and jump in line as to how we say you should do. We've got these propped up community leaders, all careerists, trying to tell our communities how we should think, what we should do. And to be honest with you, myself and many others believe enough is enough. We're not going to be towing anybody's line. We're not going to be jumping behind anybody. If anybody is saying they represent us, we want to hear from them. We want to not just hear from them, and we're not just going to be led by rhetoric that we want to hear, but by action. And that really is the way forward. That we start talking, we start mobilizing. The other side, the far right, the Zionists, they have already mobilized, they're already moving. You look at all the polls, reform is coming in strong. There's a good chance that Nigel Farage could be the next Prime Minister in this country. So we as a community need to be mobilizing. It's no good sitting in our little front rooms talking about we should do this, we should do that, criticizing him, criticizing her, but not actually getting down to the streets, getting into the institutions, getting into the politics of everything and fighting back. Because the time for schooling is over. You know, people say to me, oh, you should explain to them about what's happening in Palestine, explain how it's a genocide. I mean, please, It's been televised, it's been broadcast. If people still don't understand what a genocide is, well, they can do one. If people... If people don't realise what racism is, they can do one. You know, the whole thing carries on. The time for schooling is over. The time for just sitting around thinking is over. What we need to do now is collective action. We need to start talking, strategizing, mobilizing. And when the elections come, we have a few options. What we don't do is vote for Labour. We're not going to be blind faith led like before. Conservatives are not an option. Reform is not an option. Your party, depending on how it evolves, could be an option. People are talking about the Green Party, that's a matter for them. People are talking about the independents, it's a matter for them. But there's also the option of no voting. And that's an option too, but only as a collective, because acting independently, doing this and that, isn't going to have much power. We need to decide how we're going to move. We need to start moving, strategizing, and moving as one unit. Because if we're splintered and we're divided, we are conquered. And that's been the gameplay from the beginning. But whatever happens, the bottom line is this. When the racists come to the streets, they think it belongs to them. When the fascists come to the streets, they think it belongs to them. Same with the Zionists, and same with the politicians. But the bottom line is, it's not their streets, is it? We're the ones that live here. We're the ones who work here. And so when the racists come and the politicians come and the Zionists come, the answer has to be, my friend, these are not your streets. These are our streets. Yeah. Whose streets? Whose streets? Whose streets? And so time for action is here, my people. Time for mobilization is here. The time for sitting around and thinking is over. The time for schooling is over. Let's do this.
Thank you, Attiq. Am I still broadcasting live? Yep, I am. Okay. Our next speaker is Michael. Michael, I forgot to ask you beforehand, so I'm going to presume that I pronounced this right, and I just hope you'll just let me get away with it if it's wrong. So our next speaker is Michael Lavalette. Perfect. He's a professor in the Department of Social Work, Care and Justice at Liverpool Hope University and has published widely on radical social work and contemporary social movements. He is an independent councillor for Preston and has been for quite some time for Preston Central East, part of the Progressive Lancashire Group and a committed activist for Palestinian liberation, and he was awarded honorary membership of the Palestinian Writers' Union in recognition of his writing activism with Palestinian groups in Britain and the West Bank. Michael, please join us.
So first of all, thanks very much for inviting me to Luton. It's the first time I've ever been here, so you can ask me about it later. And the second thing, I just want to draw to your attention that I am actually holding a mic and reading notes at the same time, so I need to remember to tell my wife that because she always says I can't do two things at once. Yeah, take a picture and send it up to her. So let me just start off by introducing myself to you because I'm from Preston. And I've been an independent councillor, or I've been a councillor in Preston City Council and Lancashire County Council for a number of years. I was first elected in 2003, and at that point I was elected as something called Socialist Alliance Against the War, and I stood as an anti-war candidate against Iraq. I know I only look 26, but I'm a little bit older than that. So that was 2003. By 2007, when it was up for re-election, I had moved into, Socialist Alliance had moved into something called Respect. So I stood for Respect and was elected as a Respect councillor. 4 years later, Respect had a fallout. I'll say something about fallouts in the elector in a little while, but Respect had a fallout, and therefore I wasn't standing as Respect. I stood as something called Left List. That was completely bizarre. there was a Greater London election, and there was a list of left candidates, so that was the label, but I was the only candidate in Preston. There was a list of me, or me normally, but I was left list. The next time I stood as Trade Union and Socialist Coalition, that was TUS. After my 4 years as a TUS councillor, I thought I'd done my bit and I wasn't going to stand again, and that was the way it was until 2 years ago when the genocide started, and almost immediately people were saying, right, Michael, you've got to stand in the general election. And I did that. This time I stood as Preston Independent, so that was a different title. In fact, up to that point, every time I've stood in an election, I've stood under a different label. And then we did that well in the general election. We took Labour's majority of 20,000 down to 5,000. We became second. And that was great, except that then people said, well, if you were second then next year, which was just May past, you have to stand in the local elections. So we stood 4 candidates as Preston Independents and won 3 of those seats. Again, very exciting, except we now sit as the official opposition in Lancashire County Council. So there's the Independents, where we sit with the Greens, there's something called Progressive Lancashire. That sounds fantastic. There's 11 of us, there's 53 reform councillors in Lancashire. So just take a deep breath and we can come back to some of that in a minute. So I say that, but I introduced myself that way for 2 reasons really. First of all, to emphasise that the process of trying to build a left of Labour electoral coalition is something that I've been doing for over 20 years now, with varying degrees of success, but that's where we are. But the second thing I wanted to say is that if you were to add all those organisations that have been listed before, Socialist Alliance, Respect, Trade Union and Socialist Coalition, what was the other one, Left List, if you were to add the membership of all of those together, it would not come to 50,000 members, which is what your party has got as a membership as of today. So the first thing to say is that I know that there's some anxieties and there's all the pressures and all the fallouts, but actually to have 50,000 members of a left of Labour organisation at this point is fantastically good. It's bigger than the Independent Labour Party ever had at its height. That was 37,000. And it's bigger than the Communist Party in Britain was at its height, which was in 1945, when they had 47,000. So we now are officially the biggest left of Labour organisation that we've ever seen in Britain, and that's despite all the things that have gone on. So I want to start off by that and say that that's a good place for us to start. And so I want to think, well, how have we got here? And for me, there's 3 factors at play here. The first one is that we have been on the receiving end of a 40-year experiment that started under Margaret Thatcher and went through all those horrible Thatcher major Tory governments that were continued by Tony Blair, by the Tory or Dem coalition, by all the Tory Prime Ministers of the last election whose names I've forgotten because they were only in for 2 weeks or something. And it's continued through Starmer. For 40 years in this country, we have been subject to an experiment which has been about taking wealth from people like you and me and filtering that wealth to the very wealthy in our society. It's meant the privatisation of our nationalised services and industries. And what you should know is that from 1990, in the formerly nationalised services, gas, electricity, the post, the railway services, the bus services, those people that run those things have taken shared dividends out of those industries of £192 billion. Think what we could have done with that if we had reinvested that in our services. But that has taken that out by those parasites at the top for their own benefit in that way. So we've had privatisation of our services and the decline of our services. And for the last 15 years we've had a vicious austerity. And that vicious austerity means that for every single one of us in this room, we are worse off today than we were 15 years ago in real terms. Let me give you 2 figures. In the last 5 years, in real terms, food price inflation has gone up 33% in this country. I'm sure you know it. When you go to your supermarket and you go to buy butter, usually butter that I'm complaining about, or coffee or tea, and you suddenly realise, my God, what's happened to the price of these basic foodstuffs? 33% have gone up in the last 5 years. Your fuel prices, your gas and electricity has gone up 40% in the last 5 years. There is not a single person in this room who's had a wage rise anywhere near that. And that means that when you put rent in, when you put your bills in, it's an absolute struggle for every single one of us to get to the end of the week, to get to the end of the month. And it means that in Britain, in the 6th richest country in the world, there is over 1 million children every single day who go to bed hungry or go to bed if they're lucky enough to have a bed. That's the reality of the vast levels of inequality in the sixth richest country in this world. I'll give you a couple of figures. And 50 of those wealthiest people, the 50 wealthiest people in this country, their wealth is greater than the 55% of us at the bottom of society. 550 people. 350 people have got wealth of £772 billion. £772 billion. Now, if we were to take just half of that, those 350 people would still have, my maths is roughly right, £375 billion between them. And we could use that £375 billion to pay for our entire health budget and our entire education budget, just by taking half of their wealth off them. And you might say, well, that's a short-term solution, because what's happening next year? Well, what you also need to know is that 150 wealthiest people in this country, their wealth increases by £896 every second. Every second. So if you click your fingers, every second their wealth goes up by £896. I need to roll my notes here, but let me tell you what that means. £896 a second is £54,000 a minute. And by the time you get to 24 hours, one day, it's £77 million is what their wealth has increased. So we could take half the money off them, pay our education, pay our NHS bills. They're getting wealth back at that rate. This time next year, they would have made up what we had taken from them. We're not putting them into poverty. We're just saying for too long, they've had it too good. It's time that they paid, and they paid for our services in the wage state. So the first factor of where we are here is the objective circumstances of the horror that's been in place on working families in this country by 40 years of what's sometimes called neoliberalism. The second factor is that for 2 years, the Palestine movement, the pro-Palestine movement in this country has challenged political authority in ways that you probably didn't think was possible previously. If you give you some examples that we've probably forgotten about, but think about it when Suella Braverman said there is no way that the Palestinian marchers are going to march on the weekend of the 11th of November. And we said, we're marching. She said, you're not. And we said, we're marching. And what happened was that we marched, and the following week she lost her job. So if you think about all those things, every day, every weekend, in every town across this country, there is some event about Palestine, and it has fundamentally changed political consciousness around the question of Palestine and Israel, to the point that the vast majority of us support an immediate ceasefire, to the point of the fact that the vast majority of us now support the isolation of Israel, and the vast majority of us support Palestine in a way which was unthinkable 30 years ago or 40 years ago in this country. So the Palestine movement has given us huge resources of hope and resources of energy which created the ground for us to challenge Labour and challenge the main parties at the general election 18 months ago. And we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that at that point we had 5 MPs returned as independents. Zarah joined us later, of course. And then we also had across the country a whole number of people who stood as independents. It was the best and the biggest left of Labour vote we have ever had in this country. And it gave us the seedbed to start your party and to look at challenging Labour in those different ways. So that was the second thing. And the third thing I think we should say is that the third thing creating the conditions for your party is the disaster of Keir Starmer. You know, when you're elected with a majority government like his, you usually have a honeymoon period. For Keir Starmer, it was less honeymoon. It was more like waking up in the morning after a really dodgy one-night stand. And almost immediately, he was being questioned, wasn't he? There was the Waspy woman, there was the attack on winter fuel, there was the 2-child cap, there was his continuing support for the state of Israel, there was the growing authoritarianism of Labour in all its forms. And what we see through Starmer is the last shreds of any kind of hope that Labour would do things differently. And therefore, those three things together, 40 years of neoliberalism, the growth of the Palestine movement, the horror of what Starmer and Pillar was about, created the conditions. When Jeremy and Zarah said that they were going to start a new party, 800,000 of us signed up with enthusiasm. It shows the fantastic levels of support there is for a project that says that we have to tackle the wealth inequality gap in this country, we have to make the rich pay, we have to renationalise our services, and we have to have a society that's based on social decency. Now, of course, for the last few months, there have been some difficulties in the funding. There has been too much factionalism at the top. There have been attacks on various different leaders. Of course, the terrible events on Thursday when Zarah was going on to question time and did fantastically well, and there was a tweet put out just beforehand which wasn't at all helpful, is the kindest way to put that. And you know, there is a history of us on the left. When we see a scab, rather than try to heal it, we want to pick at it to have a fight. And my own view is that we really have to put that kind of politics behind us. We really have to say that for the vast majority of us in this room, you could think of the issues, and in about 80 to 85% of the issues, you know what? Surprise, surprise, we agree. We agree. We agree that we need to have a welfare state, not a warfare state. We agree for the renationalisation of rail and bus and gas and electricity. We agree that we all need a wage increase. We agree that the rich must pay. We must have a wealth tax, and we must have proper taxation with deal with that. We agree about all of those things. And there will be 15% in which we have got disagreements. What we've got to do is learn to grow up and to say that on that 15%, we will have a safe space where we can have decent debate and disagreement, but it doesn't lead to the breakdown of what the party is all about. We focus on the 85% because the prize for us is so great, and the need for your party, the need for a party that speaks to the millions is so, so great. It's up to us to create that party. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I think there's lots in there for us all to think about. Our next speaker, I'm really, really pleased that she's agreed to speak. I know it's a difficult thing, so please be kind and generous when she's up. But it's my absolute pleasure to introduce someone whose passion for justice and commitment to creating a better world shines through in everything that she does. She's a young activist with an extraordinary drive. She's already shown us what it means to stand up for what you believe in. During the last elections, she was one of the most dedicated canvassers for the Luton Independent team, spending countless hours knocking on doors with Uncle Attiq here, listening to voters and working really hard to bring people together around a shared vision for change. Her energy, her courage, her determination inspire me, and I think they'll inspire all of you today. Please welcome Maryam Khalil.
As I look at this room today, I see wisdom, commitment, and a shared fight for what is right. I see the drive of a new generation, supported by the strength and experience of previous ones. But the future we all deserve is currently being held hostage. Held hostage by a political system that hasn't just overlooked us, but has actively failed us all. My voice today comes from a specific place. As a young British Pakistani Muslim woman rooted in this community and a student of politics who's witnessing this failure up close. I stand here as a young person who's always been told and taught that politics is the pathway to change. But everything I've experienced tells me that our mainstream political system, built on a foundation of austerity and moral compromise, has betrayed the generation that needs its support the most. I, like many others, believe that the failure of politics is twofold. It is failing us through disastrous policy, and it's failing us by refusing to make space for our authentic, diverse voices. We're constantly told that diversity is our strength, that our melting pot of cultures and beliefs is what makes Britain great. Yet, when I bring my whole self, my faith, my heritage, my community's lived experience to the table often feels like it disappears. For as long as I can remember, we were told that the progressive left was the inclusive space, the natural home for minority voices. But too often, that space is conditional. The unspoken rule is that you are only welcome as long as your politics fit our pre-approved script. The moment you stand up and challenge the establishment, the moment you dare to articulate the specific political needs of a working class, majority Muslim constituency, you're deemed too complicated, or worse, a political risk. They don't want us to lead the narrative. They just want us to be a prop in theirs. The lack of genuine space forces people like me to choose between political engagement and personal integrity, and I refuse to choose. The feeling of being shut out led us locally to search for something else. Our community has been let down time and time again by local politicians and the mainstream parties. We needed more than career climbing and empty promises. We needed an authentic voice, a voice that wasn't afraid to speak truth to power for the people who live and breathe here. And that's exactly what happened when we supported our local independent candidates, Attiq Malik and Taqi Shah. It was a genuine moment of grassroots hope. The movement was open, it was welcoming, and it was built on a shared struggle. It was a beautiful example of what politics should be, neighbours helping neighbours to achieve real representation. This is democracy in action, and it showed us the true potential of our community when we unite outside of the suffocating grip of the national parties. But the disappointment came quickly, not from within our ranks, but from the outside. We were dismissed. We were positioned by the wider political response as, at best, politically immature, and at worst, we were framed as somehow dangerous and threatening. Ironically, while out campaigning, many other young activists and I faced multiple instances of attempts to intimidate us. And I think that was specifically because we were young and they thought that they could frighten us. But I want to be clear. This attempt to delegitimize us and silence us, to frame our passion for justice as a threat, is rooted in racism and Islamophobia. There's no other way to understand it. We know what racism looks like, and we know what Islamophobia looks like, and we refuse to be gaslighted over our experiences. Why else would an authentic local community movement for change be dismissed, be treated with such disdain and suspicion, while the very people who bankrupt our communities are treated with respect? This is how the system tries to scare us back into silence and obedience. But if they want to talk about danger, let us talk about what actually harms us all. What's actually dangerous is the cruel policy of austerity that strips our schools, our hospitals, and our youth and community centres bare, taking away all the resources that young people need to thrive, and then looking down at us in disdain for failing to achieve what they have actively made impossible. What is actually dangerous is an education system that comes with a price tag, student loans with extortionate interest rates, forcing young people like me into a lifetime of debt before we've even started. It's a financial shackle designed to stifle social mobility and, again, preventing young people like me from building the futures we deserve. And what's truly, profoundly immoral are the votes taken in Parliament, MPs voting to take away the winter fuel payment from our vulnerable pensioners, and MPs supposedly representing a town like ours, where the government's own figures show over 18,000 children living in poverty, refusing to lift the two-child benefit limit. It's beyond immoral, it's systemic cruelty. And finally, the most stinging hypocrisy. We, the campaigners and activists, raising our voices against an active live-stream genocide, were labelled dangerous by the same people and institutions who were facilitating it through the supply of weapons, the sharing of intelligence, and most damning of all, by providing moral cover. The true threat to this nation is not the people standing here demanding justice, it is the self-serving hypocrisy of those in power. We have seen their failure, we have felt their exclusion, we've identified the real enemy, policies rooted in profit over people. We reject the divisive labels that they attempt to place on us. We are not a threat, we are the solution. We are not immature, we're clear-sighted. We refuse to accept the status quo. We will not wait for permission to be heard. We will build our own space. We will build the movement that is truly inclusive, authentically local, and morally uncompromising. Let the silence of the establishment be met with the roar of our movement. The work starts now. Thank you.
I said she was good. Our next speaker probably needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. He spent more than 2 decades championing real bottom-up community power. He's a grassroots organiser through and through, working class, anti-capitalist, and proudly driven by a one love philosophy.
Yes.
You know what's coming. A founding member of the Exodus Collective, Glenn He helped transform disused buildings and land into not-for-profit homes and community spaces, showing us what people-led change can achieve. He's continued that work ever since, supporting community self-organisation across Luton and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, Glenn Jenkins.
Hi everyone.
Hi Glenn.
How you doing?
Solidarity, mate.
All doing good, yeah? Hello Luton. I'm here as a Lutonian, first and foremost. I'm here as a working class Lutonian who knows what being skint's all about, who knows most of the people I know never have more than one day a month where they ain't got any money. That's the reality for millions and millions and millions of people in this country. And I feel like we get big time left out of the discussion, right? Because there's one thing talking about class, because class matters. There's a class war going on. Everyone's talking about neoliberalism. Neoliberalism's a new name for Thatcherism, for privatisation of everything that moves, for everything's a commodity. There's no such thing as society. All this bullshit we've been fed for, and it weren't so bad when Margaret Thatcher said it, but then when Tony Blatcher said it as well, we knew we're in big trouble. And I want to talk about, for a couple of minutes, about Luton and what happened to Luton. I started work in 1979 on British Rail, and trust me, British Rail was a whole lot better than it is now, in terms of working conditions, in terms of service, feeling like you're doing something for the public, instead of something for shareholders of Virgin, and all of this. It was a different country. In 1979, I was 16, and I'd grown up in a council house on Kirkwood Road, Lucy Farm, Luton, with my 3 brothers, brother and sister, and my parents. One worked at Whitbread, and one wage, my dad's wage at Whitbread as a drayman, paid for us to have a council house, a holiday every year, a family car. Mum and dad would go out on Fridays, pay a babysitter. It was a skin-ish but decent life. You could live on one wage. Now, 2 wages on a 0-hour contract will not pay the rent for your house, trust me. Right? On Marsh Farm, where my family house is £600 for a 3-bedroom house. And I'm proud to say that we raised our family there in a really happy environment with a good garden, just like when I was a kid, and the rent was affordable. The same house now, if you go and look in the paper on Rightmove or whatever, you'll see the same house for private rent by a private rented landlord for £1,500 a month. That's 2.5 times what the council rate is. And then these cheeky bastards have the nerve to say, well, there's affordable housing, and affordable means 80% of market value. Well, I'll tell you about market value in the housing scene. Market value used to be, when my mum and dad bought their first house in Luton, they paid £9,900, right? That same house is now worth nearly £300,000. What used to be 3 times your income is now 10 times your income for the average house, for the average income. How is anybody supposed to do anything about that? And this is where I want to talk about being bold. Everyone's been stuck in the neoliberal bubble, whether it's Labour, Tory, Lib Dem, Reform. All they're saying is more of the same, more of the grotty same, more private landlords, maybe with a little bit of rent control. In other words, tinkering rather than taking on. And I'm saying that whether it be work, rest or play, Thatcherism and what it done to our council houses, to our workplaces, to our publicly owned treasures needs to be undone. Undone. Not tinkering, not messing about, I'm not joking. I'm saying that you say how. I'll tell you how. How? Yeah. We have to confront this orthodoxy that says private property is the primary mattering thing. Yeah. He's entitled to do what he needs to do with his housing, etc. We need to confront that and say, look, if there was a law passed by a socialist party, and only a socialist party would do this, even think about this. If there was a law passed that said each person can own one house, yeah? You can own house. I've got nothing against owning our own house, but I've got something against you owning 12. I've got something against you owning 500. Right. So if we were to pass a law that said each person, and so you got 3 years to shift that off, do you know what that would do? That would put 2-point-something million houses onto the market, therefore the prices would drop probably by a third. Now some would say, oh, well, my house price would drop by... It's not a drop, it's a correction. It's going back towards 3 times your income, not 10 times your income. Right? That would be called radical, because who would mind about that? Who would cry? The landlords would cry. And this class war we're going on about, right? Thatcher, Blatcher, Keir Stacher, all of them have weighted it over to the side of the landlord, of the corporate owner, of the boss, and away from the working class poor like me who are effing fed up of it, right? So when this party came about, I was over the moon. I was over the moon when Jeremy came through and said he'd build 500,000 council houses. But guess what? That takes 10 years. What about now? What I'm talking about now, a phased reclaim of those public stock housing at a third, 2/3 of the price they're at now, is a way forward. And here's one more from me, yeah? Right. Working class issues, what we are talking about here, cost of living, all of these things we're talking about. These are the things people are interested in, mate. They're not interested in what football team you support or what your views are on this. They're interested in, how are you going to change my life? And I think, despite all the fuckeries, the stuff that's gone on in the early start of this thing, if we can get to a stage where we can keep it together, get a manifesto that talks about these things, that talks about how we're going to change, nationalise back our industries, how we're going to get council and social housing back to its proper levels. If we're talking about that, people will want to hear us, right? If we're not talking about that, you'll be seen rightly as more of the same, leaving nothing changed and tinkering with it. And 2 more things. Peace. Peace, man, is the most critical thing here, right? All the rest of what we're talking about, if we're talking about fixing the housing, fixing the railways, fixing the water, and we're all dead, right, because we decided that expansionist, imperialist states are a good thing, and we're going to be the daddy at it, you know. Palestine is an expose of who we're dealing with here. If anyone thought that weren't shaitan or the wicked spirit, now we know, right? Genocide live streamed in our face, no holds barred. So no one can have any doubts left as to who we're dealing with. Them same people are pushing us to war right now with Russia.
Yeah.
Is everyone all right with that? Because I'm not all right with that. Your party shouldn't be all right with that. Your party shouldn't be all right with NATO and expansionist military things like that. And last but not least, yeah, how we talked when you introduced me. We were talking about local grassroots power. There's a massive gap in this country in terms of what we call democracy. Big inverted commas, by the way, when I say that word, democracy. Because if a third of us vote for someone every 5 years, and then they go in that 5-year gap of no contact, there's all sorts of self-serving going on, and party this and party that, and me this, and then you find out, oh, he's become a lord in the House, have become Lord Summit of Southgate or something like this. You know, from the working class ranks, you know, from our people, this is what we've seen happening time after time. I'm working at the moment as a part of a national movement on popular local assemblies in the neighbourhood. Now, if you gather with your neighbours every 3 months and you learn how to exercise collective muscles, power muscles, right? Things will change, because guess what? Your elected representative is all of a sudden accountable whenever you want to call him. At the moment, there's a 5-year void. The people's assemblies that we're working on, if there was one of those happening in not just Marsh Farm, and the ambition is throughout the town, that we start to meet and greet on a regular basis in order to exercise our view and our position on things, then the power structure starts to change, because accountability comes into it. And unless we learn to organise in a grassroots level together and be able to keep our shit together, not as we've seen, keep our shit together, then we are going places, yeah? So we need a socialist party to deal with problems that capitalism has caused. Let's do it.
Thank you so much, Glenn. And Glenn talks about class quite a bit, and I think it's really important. I think it's also important for us to think about how class comes up in politics. And when people or politicians talk to us about what the white working class community, I'm really interested to know why I'm not working class. I think if we sat down together, we're roughly the same age. He's just smoked a lot of fags. But we're roughly the same age. We would have had quite similar lives, quite similar experiences growing up, but I am somehow excluded from the working class, and there is, I'm sure we can all understand, a purpose for doing that. Our next speaker, yeah, I'm just going to come out there, like my favourite. I'm really excited to welcome him here. I'm regularly dragging him down to Luton now. If we play our cards right tonight, guys, we might be able to adopt him. The last time he spoke at an event that, again, I dragged him down to, he was described as the Eminem of political speakers. And once you hear him, I think you'll understand why. He is a writer, thinker, activist whose work explores inequality, empire, and how we can begin to imagine a fairer world. He's just finished his PhD, which looks at how, I'm hoping I get this right, completed his PhD looking at how debates about the end of capitalism from Marx to today have shaped and perhaps limited our visions of a just world. Alongside his academic work, Barnaby has been a committed activist, particularly in the movements for Palestinian liberation, speaking out, organising and amplifying calls for freedom and equality. Please welcome Barnaby Raine.
An introduction like that, Rehana, it's not very friendly, it makes it hard to live up to. It is great to be in Luton, a place that I have come to love through Rehana drawing me into various nefarious organising work. It is great to be here, but it is also frightening. I've been attending left-wing political meetings for too long, given I'm still a child. And this time feels especially frightening. We have a government who've sent fact-finding missions over to Denmark to learn about Danish immigration and asylum policy. In Denmark, when refugees arrive, the police confiscate their jewelry. In Denmark, they declare some housing estates non-Western if more than 50% of people who live in those housing estates are not white and Danish. They say they're non-Western, and they've passed a law, they can demolish them. And we have a government that says it wants to learn how to do immigration and asylum policy from Denmark. Shame. That's not Nigel Farage, that's a Labour government. That's what we're facing. We are facing a Labour government that is sleepwalking us into a kind of politics that I grew up amid a sea of Islamophobia, a kind of politics that I grew up thinking was beyond acceptability. The P word widespread on our streets, that was in the distant past. People used to talk about the dreaded 70s and 80s. Tommy Robinson, of this parish, When he used to try to organise demonstrations, we would outnumber him with thousands and thousands and thousands of anti-racists, anti-fascists. Now he leads parades of over 100,000 people through the streets of London, while leading lights in a party that is leading the polls say things that are sympathetic to him. And his politics have hardened, they haven't moderated. And we have a Labour government talking out of both sides of its face, which one second says, oh, some reform politician said something racist, we must condemn it, we'll get a statement from the Prime Minister. The next second says, well, have some of your policies, please. While sleepwalking us into that kind of hard right rule, which is a threat to all of us in our communities, because the centre has no answers to give people a better life. The politics of the good life. The politics where you vote and get active in your communities and believe that you can make life better for you and your children, that you can have more time to spend with your loved ones, more space to play with your family in. You can feel free of anxiety, real freedom. That hope, that promise is so utterly gone from a shrunken political sphere that the only thing they've got, the only thing the political class have got across the centre and the right, while pay flatlines, while rents go up, while prices go up, while all that money seems to us like it just disappears, but in fact it all goes into a FTSE 100 now worth over £2 trillion, the only thing they've got, while our lives shrink and shrivel, is to turn us on each other. Is to send fact-finding missions to a country that demolishes housing blocks because there are too many non-white people living in them. A Labour government. That's the example they're taking. So I come here today, to be honest, with a sense of some anxiety, some trepidation. Because the stakes that we face now are greater, I think, than ever in my little life. The stakes are enormous. We have a political mainstream marching headlong into open racism. We have announcements from government today that they're going to make asylum support discretionary. As if lots of people coming over on small boats happen to be multimillionaires. So we've got to weed them out. We have people claiming that they're trying to protect women and girls, massing outside places they call hotels, with rats running around in the corridor, as Zarah said excellently on Question Time the other night. We have people massing outside hotels saying they're there to protect women and girls, casting those desperately fleeing persecution as a dangerous, violent, lurking threat. A whole political mainstream applauds them. Meanwhile, they have us standing up to sing God Save the King for a family that spent £12 million to try to hush up allegations of basically human trafficking. That's the absurdity. That's the absurdity of this country. Everyone in this room and around the country knows that if Andrew Mountbatten Windsor were a brown man from Rochdale, he'd be in a prison cell right now. Everyone knows it. Yeah. Everyone knows it. But they would turn us on each other, attack our communities in every way. In every way. By ensuring that we have less to take home at the end of the month. By ensuring everything we have to buy costs more. By ensuring that that social wage that we rely on, our schools, our hospitals, our community centres, youth clubs that have shut, every aspect of that social wage, benefits, pensions, they shrink. They take more and more and more from us. And then some of us they take even more from, by saying we shouldn't even feel safe in this country at all. The Danish system on migration says you don't get permanent right to stay. It can be revoked if you get a parking ticket. They would say to some in our communities, just like everyone else, you're going to be paid less, and you're going to have crap schools, and you're going to have crap hospitals, but you also, every time you see a police officer, I spent time for my PhD in America, know what it's like now, every time you see a police officer, some of you will have to cower in the thought that your right to even be here might go away. And it doesn't really matter if you say, well, I've got a British passport, my parents had a British passport, because if you look a certain way, the police will be coming for you. It's what they've done in America. That's the direction we're sleepwalking into. We are in a slow motion drama of the 1930s. And in the 1930s in Germany, a place where members of my community, the Jewish community, found out the hard way, the cost of division and inaction on the left. A left that could have been strong enough to stop the Nazis and didn't live up to the moment. So the stakes of this political moment are enormous. Racism is a distraction strategy, that's what it always is, to ensure one of the great things Zarah did on Question Time the other night, raising wealth taxes. And don't you notice how all the fake populists suddenly vanish? Oh, reform, they're keen to raise their fists against every elite they imagine. Cultural elites, academic elites, sporting elites, musical elites. Anyone who has a view slightly to the left of Attila the Hun becomes an elite they have to tackle and confront. And then when you raise the people who really are the elite in this country, the people who are taking all the money from the rest of us, suddenly the populism vanishes. Oh, wealth taxes, that wouldn't work. Oh, it would be very difficult. Oh, I think all the rich would flee. What kind of a populist are you? The answer is, racism is their distraction strategy today, their overwhelming distraction strategy to keep us poor and to turn us on each other and to ensure that some of us aren't even safe here at all. So, I just want to emphasize the severity of the stakes and to encourage us to see two futures ahead of us. The future that our political leaders are taking us towards is one of rising spending in one area only, rising defense spending. More and more money, just like your rent, and just like those bills, it doesn't actually vanish like it seems to. More and more money into the pockets of arms contractors and all those members of parliament and their friends who've invested in arms companies. More and more money for them, more and more money for guns and wars, while stealing wedding rings from refugees who arrive on our shores and who they want to convince us are our enemies. That's the future. Money in defense contractors' pockets, and the rest of us fighting to steal wedding rings from refugees. Is that the future you want? No. You know, it gets even worse. The president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, said something I never forget, near to the beginning of the genocide in Gaza. He said that he is concerned, as the leader of a South American nation doing its best to decarbonize, he is concerned that what he sees in Gaza is a template for the future of humanity. More and more people declared surplus to requirements. People who are just a problem. That is how Zionism, much of Zionism, has always seen the Palestinian people. A problem. Sitting in a land the Zionists wish they weren't there. A problem. To be managed, to be pushed out, eventually to be annihilated. A problem. People you wish weren't there. That is the entire direction of British politics when it comes to migration. And by the way, when the Danish government took wedding rings from refugees, they made an exception. They said, we won't take them from Ukrainians. So don't think the conversation about migration can be separated from the conversation about race. Don't think that if you've got your papers, if you've got your citizenship, you're safe. I tell you, my family thought that in Germany and Eastern Europe. We're safe, we're a bit better off than that other lot. We've got a bit more legal permission than another lot, we'll be fine. No, they're coming for all of us. All of us who value, who love our communities. Because to love our communities, to love and care about our neighbours, is to love the fact that people have enough support, that the elderly can live in peace and quiet, and to be angry when they can't. And it is also to love the fact that our neighbours come from all over the world. And that we have more in common with people who come from all over the world. We are here, as you heard earlier, because you were there, migrants used to say to the British. To love the fact that our neighbours come from all over the world, and we all have in common in the communities we build much more than any of us have with Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor, and all the others who assault and prey on the innocent and the vulnerable because they don't consider them really human. That's the battle. That's the battle of our politics. So I finish by saying that it is good to be in Luton.
Good to have you.
It is good to be in Luton precisely because when I go to sleep at night, shit scared of Tommy Robinson, I know that this is not only the place that he comes from, this is also the place that built alliances, that brought communities together to drive him out of this town. That's why it's good to be in Luton. It's good to be in Luton because I know that this town, as well as being a petri dish for the fascism that we now face and how to fight it, was a petri dish for that more established, more respectable racism that comes from the offices of government things like the prevent agenda. I know that this is the town where a child was harassed by the police for saying the word cucumber. I think Attiq represented him. I know that this is the town where they have tried their strategies of division and where people have come together to resist them. And I know that this is the town where people don't want politicians who take 2 years to say a word of criticism about a genocide and then only do so when they think it's safe. This is a town that wants politicians who will defend its communities, who will stand up for our freedoms and our rights, will bring us together, not divide us, will call out a genocide, and will bring in the better world that we all deserve. So that's why it's good to be in Luton. So this is the moment to stop the slide into fascism. Nothing's inevitable, nothing's fixed, but it's the moment to do everything we can to unite with everyone we can in order to say it is not acceptable to be asked to choose between taking wedding rings off refugees and dithering inaction that allows our public services to crumble and collapse so that the far right grows. Those are not the acceptable choices. And if those are the choices between Keir Starmer and Nigel Farage, we get Nigel Farage. The best we get is Keir Starmer aping him. Those can't be the choices. We need better choices, we need different choices, and so it's a real honour and delight to be on the platform with everyone here, and especially with Zarah. Thanks so much.
Was that right? Was that right? Was that good? That was good. I'm actually a little bit embarrassed to say, how many times have you been here, Barnaby? I've not bought in chicken and chips yet. I feel like that's something I need to put right. Our next speaker, again, probably needs no introduction. She has been a passionate advocate for justice, equality, human rights, both here and abroad. Her career is marked by those challenges to the structures that oppress people, whether that's racism and Islamophobia, inequality at home, or the denial of Palestinian liberation abroad. As a Muslim woman of colour in politics, she has faced significant abuse and obstacles, but has remained steadfast in her commitment to speaking truth to power. I've oftentimes spoken to kind of friends and family when I see images, and you'll know what I'm talking about, of Zarah sitting in Parliament. And there's the auntie in me that just really wants to come and hug her. And I had that opportunity today, thank you. Alongside Jeremy Corbyn, she's one of the co-founders of your party. She's here today to share with us her vision for the party and for politics more broadly, so we can think about how we can build a more inclusive, people-powered movement that fights for justice and amplifies all our voices. Please join me in welcoming Zarah Sultana.
Thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure to come back to Luton, to go to Al Quds restaurant, which Glenn introduced me to the last time I was in Luton, and I will be going there again today to get some Palestinian food after this. I just want to thank you all for being here. There are so many things you could have been doing on your Sunday afternoon, but you are here to talk about the new party of the left that we are building together, and I will always be grateful for your time. From the old Vauxhall plants to the estates of Marsh Farm, the people of Luton have always known how to fight. You built this town. It was the hands of car workers, engineers and care staff that powered this town long before developers and investors saw profit in it. Luton's history is one of resistance, from the strikes of the 1970s to the anti-racist movements that stood firm against the far right. When they tried to divide you, you stood up shoulder to shoulder. From Bury Park to Hightown, you've shown that unity is stronger than hate, and they continue to try to pit us against each other. From the languages we speak, the race that we have, and the religion that we choose to follow. But we know the truth. It's not language, race, or religion that divides us. It's power. It's the same power that shuts down factories and calls it progress. The same power that pushes families into poverty while landlords line their pockets. So look around. Luton is changing, but who's it changing for? They call it regeneration. We know that it's theft. So today we channel that anger against inequality, against racism, against fascism, and for a socialist future that belongs to all of us. The truth is, people are angry. If you knock on doors in Luton and you knock on doors in Coventry, people are angry and they have every right to be. In fact, they should be bloody furious. Furious that life keeps getting harder while wages stay the same. Furious that our water companies are literally pumping shit into our rivers, our energy companies are making record profits, and families in our communities are choosing between heating and eating. Furious that it takes weeks to see a GP, months for a mental health referral, and years for a council house. Furious that we're told we have to tighten our belts while billionaires literally blast themselves into space. And furious that time and time again we're told there is no alternative to this inequality, this cruelty, and this chaos, that somehow this is the best that we can do. Well, I'm here to say that they're wrong, there is an alternative, and it's called socialism. People have lost faith in politics. They look at Westminster and they see it as a playground for the privileged. Ministers more concerned with getting free tickets to see Sabrina Carpenter and getting their rich mates to give them designer clothes than whether families can afford food. They care more about ministerial cars and Zone 2 dinner parties than making people's lives materially better. And they talk about hard choices, and they'll do that in the run-up to the budget that's coming. But the only hard choices are for everyone else and never for themselves. So trust in the political class is broken. In that vacuum, the far right grows. But let's be clear, Reform, Nigel Farage, they are not the answer. They are not an alternative. They are another wing of the establishment, funded by billionaires and aristocrats, fronted by a millionaire stockbroker. They peddle racism, Islamophobia and division, not to solve any crises we face, but to distract us from who is really responsible. Their message is very simple. They tell us, don't look up. Don't look up at the landlords hiking rent. Don't look up at the corporations dodging tax. Don't look up at the energy CEOs making millions. No, they tell us, look sideways. Blame your neighbor, blame the refugee, blame the Muslim. It's an old trick, divide and rule, and we're not falling for it anymore. The rise of the far right did not happen overnight. This is decades in the making. Neoliberalism, wearing different coloured rosettes, has laid the groundwork for this. We have been told there is no money for housing, there is no money for free school meals, there is no money to scrap the 2-child benefit cap, there is no money for the NHS, yet somehow there is always money for war. Why is that? Why is there always money for war and never for the poor? Money for corporate bailouts, money for tax breaks for the super wealthy, while migrants are scapegoated and minorities are blamed. Politicians tell us, blame other working class people, because otherwise you might blame the real enemy. Establishment politicians that lick the boot of billionaires. Rupert Murdoch, Michelle Mone, Elon Musk, and the royal family. And we shouldn't just abolish the titles that Prince Andrew has, we should abolish the monarchy itself. The result of this corrupt billionaire system is clear for all of us to see. The largest fascist mobilizations this country has seen in decades. Racist thugs marching through our towns and cities, women and children assaulted for the colour of their skin and whether they wear a headscarf or not. And in my home region of the West Midlands, 2 Sikh women raped in racially motivated attacks. Absolutely disgusting. And I spoke at the anti-Tommy Robinson demonstration because I believe this firmly, that you don't stop fascism by ignoring it, you don't stop fascism by echoing its lies like the Labour Party, you stop fascism by fighting back. And in the 70s and 80s, the Anti-Nazi League drove the National Front off our streets. That's the unity and courage that we need again. An anti-fascist league for the 21st century. And that means our trade unions stepping up. I'm sorry, but it's not good enough to just have logos on banners and leaflets. We need coaches and people flooding the streets, because when the fascists turn up, we turn up. And the far right across Europe thrives on fear and division, wanting to turn neighbour against neighbour, worker against worker. We have to defeat them by offering hope and material improvements to people's lives. People don't need culture wars. They need secure jobs, warm homes, affordable food, and a future for their children. So yes, We must defeat fascism at the ballot box, but where necessary, we fight the fascists in the streets as well. What is it that we're fighting for? Well, it terrifies the establishment, but it's something very beautiful. It's called socialism. And we're not interested in tweaking a broken system. We're not interested in just a wealth tax here and lowering some bills there. We are here for the fundamental transformation of society, to replace capitalism with democracy in every workplace, in every community, and every corner of life. That means workers controlling the means of production. That means communities controlling the wealth that they produce. That is socialism. I'm very proud to be a socialist, and everyone should wear it as a badge of honor. But you'll get people on TV and on the radio saying we shouldn't call ourselves socialists, we shouldn't talk about class politics. It turns people off. Absolute nonsense. People aren't turned off by class politics. They live it every single day. It's class war when bills rise and wages don't. It's class war when landlords evict tenants and bankers get bonuses. It's class war when there are more food banks than McDonald's restaurants. It's class war when the richest 50 families hoard more wealth than half the country. It's class war, and it's about time we won that war. And then you've got the Labour Party, and every time I talk about the Labour Party, it's like talking about a toxic ex. You both moved on, but we want to talk about it. The Labour Party under Keir Starmer has become unrecognisable. It is now a party of corporate lobbyists and billionaire donors. A party so anti-socialist, it's McCarthyite. They've won a huge majority on a pitifully low vote share. And what have they done with it? You might say nothing, but it's worse than nothing. They are destroying the country. They've refused to scrap the two-child benefit cap, condemning hundreds of thousands of children to poverty that could be ended overnight. They've cut winter fuel payments, they've cut disability benefits, they've watered down a workers' rights package, they've attacked our civil liberties, and labelled people of conscience protesting genocide as terrorists. To be clear, they are heroes. The terrorists are the Israeli government, our government, that have enabled genocide. And when Keir Starmer uses the same fascist language as Enoch Powell, calling us an island of strangers, shame on him and every Labour politician that went out and defended him. Because we are not an island of strangers, we are an island that is suffering. We see the rich and powerful laughing at us, but we are done begging for crumbs. We are taking the bloody lot. And that's why we're here, that's why we're building a new party of the left, your party. Because billionaires already have 3 parties, it's about time the rest of us had one. But this party cannot be a Labour 2.0. We will not tolerate a culture of leaks to right-wing journalists, legal threats, defamation, bullying, intimidation, and the kind of deliberate sabotage we saw on Thursday evening before I went on Question Time. I will not tolerate that behaviour, the movement will not tolerate that behaviour, and it has no room in what we are building. We also are not here to replicate structures of the Labour Party. We will not settle for crumbs off capitalism's table. We are here to fight for real material change. I'm not interested in managing capitalism more politely. I'm not sure anyone in this room is. We want to replace it because we understand the problem isn't just a few greedy companies or a few bad bosses. It is a system that puts profit before people, greed before humanity, militarism before peace. And as long as this system stays in place, it will reproduce ecological destruction, inequality, and exploitation. And what we want to build is a world where the economy serves society, not the other way around, where no one goes hungry, no one sleeps rough, and no child grows up poor. That is the vision, and it's only socialism that can lay the foundation for genuine equality, genuine dignity, and genuine freedom. That's what I want your party to be fighting for. And our socialism doesn't recognise borders. We stand with the oppressed everywhere, from Sudan to Congo to Palestine. And let me say clearly that if we fight for it, your party will be an anti-Zionist party. Because you cannot be neutral on apartheid. You cannot normalise genocide, and Israel must be treated the same way South Africa was under apartheid as a pariah state. So we will sever all diplomatic relations with the genocidal apartheid state of Israel. That means expelling the ambassador and shutting down the embassy. And we will stand with Palestinians until every inch of their land is free, a single democratic state from the river to the sea with equal rights for all. And we have to ensure that there is a day of reckoning for those who have enabled genocide. Keir Starmer, David Lammy, Shabana Mahmood, the whole lot who are responsible must face accountability in The Hague. We must make sure that happens. We also know that peace isn't just the absence of bombs, it is the presence of peace. And justice means freedom, it's the presence of justice. And justice means freedom from military occupation. It means freedom from apartheid. And it is our anti-imperialism that means we also reject the myth that NATO promotes peace and security. It is an imperialist war machine that promotes and profits from death and destruction. You cannot greenwash NATO. Just look at Afghanistan and Libya, endless NATO wars that have made the world less safe. And every pound we spend on tanks, missiles and bombs is money stolen from our homes, hospitals and schools. So we demand wages, not weapons, welfare, not warfare. And the politics that doesn't centre the most marginalised isn't worthy of the name socialism. That means saying loudly and unequivocally, trans rights are human rights. The rise in transphobia that we are seeing is being stoked deliberately as part of a wider culture war to divide us all. And just like with migrants, just like with Muslims, just like with disabled people, the goal is always the same. Find a scapegoat to distract people from who is really holding the power. And our movement with one voice has to say, we are not playing that game. We stand with trans people, we stand with Muslims, we stand with migrants, we stand with disabled people because we stand with the most marginalised. Our power lies in our unity, and when we move as one, we are truly unstoppable. Yes. So let's talk about democracy, real democracy, not just taking part in elections every 5 years and electing a millionaire who will administer austerity. I want to talk about party democracy because we've all seen what happens when parties stop belonging to their members. When members who do the work, who knock on doors, who deliver the leaflets, who raise the money, are shut out when decisions are made. That is not democracy, that is not socialism, that is not what we are building here. We are building a democratic, member-led socialist party with foundations strong enough to last a generation and beyond. And that means maximum member democracy. Because this is your party, it must belong to you. And our starting point, the first principle of everything we're fighting for, is that our conference must be the supreme democratic body of the party. And that's what I mean by the people's whip. Conference decisions binding on all elected representatives. So if members vote for a policy, MPs and councillors must carry it out. This is not an advisory thing, it is binding. Only way to stop what's happened in the past, where MPs have treated members like volunteers, not equals, and all future conferences must have delegates elected by all member meetings. That is how we guarantee a truly democratic party. And our leadership must be accountable to members, not insulated from them. So our executive committee must have positions that are all ordinary positions, open to every member to contest, nothing reserved for MPs and councillors. We must hold these elections by the end of this year to ensure that the leadership is democratic, not appointed. We know that democracy delayed is democracy denied. And if this project is to succeed, it must be a home for the whole socialist movement. It is our job to unite the left. And that's why I'm supporting calls for dual membership, lowering the membership age to 14, and allowing people who live abroad to join as international members. And our membership shouldn't be just for those who have the right to vote in this country. It must be open to everyone who lives here, because socialism means solidarity with our whole class, including our migrant communities. If you live here, if you work here, if you struggle here, then this party is yours. And our young members aren't just the future, they are the present. And that's why we need a formal youth section with real power and representation. Not tokenistic youth recs, not just symbolic committees, not just having people to tell us what's the latest TikTok trend we need to follow, but a proper structure that gives young people a voice in how this party is run. Because their energy, their creativity, and their courage must be at the heart of everything that we do. And we've all seen what happens when candidate selections are rigged in backroom deals, when seats become personal fiefdoms, and when the membership is told to accept whoever you're given. Not anymore. Only members decide who represents them. Not MPs, not steering committees, not bureaucrats hiding in the shadows. Only members. And that means open selection, mandatory reselection, and the option to recall. We are not here for coronations. We are not building another Labour Party, because I didn't leave the Labour Party to create another one. I can tell you that for free. So every representative accountable to their members continuously, because if you can't win the confidence of your members, you probably shouldn't represent them. And for real democracy to work, it must be resourced. Local branches must receive 50% of membership subs and full access to membership data so they can actually organise. That's how you build a living, breathing branch that can campaign, support strikes, mobilise against fascists, support tenants' unions, and build real social power in our communities. Wherever there is a site of struggle in our communities, whether that's picket lines, anti-fascist mobilisations, our members and elected representatives must be there. Branches shouldn't be seen as just call centres on election day. If we get this right, they will be the centre of working class organisation. And so members decide everything in terms of how this party is structured, including the leadership model. Should we have a sole leader? Should it be co-leaders? Should it be a collective leadership? Well, that's not for me to decide. It's for members to decide. And finally, we must have independent oversight of the sortition process for this conference and all internal elections, because democracy means nothing without transparency. We need a full independent audit of party finances, and our treasurer and general secretary must be elected through one member, one vote. No more secrets. No more, just trust us, we've been doing politics for a really long time kind of approach. Trust is built through openness and transparency. It is not a given. And just to sum this up, my motivation has been very simple. Member democracy, maximum member democracy, to strengthen our collective power, to put members in control, and to build a radically democratic socialist party we know this country urgently needs. And I will continue to fight for grassroots control, because without it, we're just like the other parties out there, a hollow party machine, and we cannot build socialism without democracy. So decisions made by those who do the work, where MPs and councillors are accountable, where branches have power, where young people lead, where socialists of every background have a home. If we get this right, if we build a party that truly belongs to its members, not MPs, we all have created something that can't be bought or captured. And despite all the teething issues, and admittedly, there's been a few, we already have 50,000 members. We are already the largest socialist party since the 1940s. But it is our job to make it the most democratic socialist party in modern British history. So together, we can build a movement that challenges state power, a movement that can dismantle the rotten establishment, confront capitalism and imperialism head-on, and rebuild society from the ground up. Because we know that real change has never come from above. It's always been won from struggles from below. Every right, every gain, every bit of social progress has been won through struggle, whether it's women having the right to vote, whether it's the NHS, or whether it's workplace rights. They have been fought for from below, from our communities, because power doesn't lie in Westminster. Power lies in our trade unions, in our tenants' unions, in the climate movement, and in the fight for Palestinian liberation. And if you think that I'm just talking about a fantasy, look around the world. It's already happening. In New York, Zohran Mamdani, unapologetically socialist, unapologetically Muslim, unapologetically immigrant, built a campaign and proved what's possible when the working class organises. With over 100,000 volunteers, they knocked on more than 3 million doors and made over 4 million phone calls, defeating billionaires, defeating pro-Israel lobbyists, defeating a political dynasty, building power from below. They won and gave us hope, not just in New York, they gave us all hope, because what that victory showed is that when we organise, when we mobilise, when we fight for socialism, we can win here too. And so there's so much to be hopeful for. I have felt it in the 30 or so events I've been to up and down the country. Over 800,000 people initially expressed interest in your party. Those people haven't gone away. They're watching, they're waiting, they're ready to join and fight. What's more, public opinion is already with us, against war, against genocide, for renationalisation, for workers' rights and for properly funded public services. What we need to build is a united movement to bring those struggles together. Because united we are strong, united we will win. Because we know this fundamental truth, that working class people can run society better than the billionaires, the profiteers, and the war criminals who rule over us today. The crises we face are immense, but so is our potential. If we organise, if we build, if we fight, we can defeat the far right and build a society, a socialist society based on justice, equality, and peace. What we have before us is a historic task, but that is also the potential of your party. So thank you for being here today, but this can't be your only contribution to the struggle. If you haven't already joined, join your party, get active in your local community, in your local tenants union and trade union, and organise, build the power that we need to fight back. Because if you want change, if you want socialism, you bloody have to fight for it. They are not going to hand it to you. I have never been more certain of anything than this, that if we fight, we will win. The choice is clear. Just watch the news or scroll on your social media. The choice is between socialism or barbarism, and we must choose socialism every single time. And I'll finish with one of my favourite quotes from Arundhati Roy, who says, "Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." Thank you in solidarity.
Thank you very much, Zarah. I am going to, right, we have promised a Q&A. I've got the questions here. We will go through them. I'll try to group some together so that we can try to get through as many as possible. I'll try and get through as many as possible. Just to say, Maghrib Salah, I think, is in, well, how long have we got? Still Maghrib?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Is it 3 minutes?
Rapid fire. Come on.
So if people who want to pray, you can see Melissa at the back. Melissa, if you can tell people where the prayer area is, it's just at the back. I don't know if people want a few minutes to stretch their legs and grab a cup of tea, or do you want to go straight? Yeah? Okay. If we give you all sort of five minutes or so to stretch your legs, grab a cup of tea, and then we'll come back with the Q&A. Right, just before we start, I want to thank Zarah there for setting out kind of her vision for your party, the motivation around it, you know, how she envisages it, what sort of policies that your party want to support. And I know from speaking to some of you in that break, you agree with some of them and you might not agree with others. That's okay. I think that's okay. What I do want us to also think about though is, and I said it right at the beginning, that I think today is also about us thinking about what kind of politicians that we want. Yes, the politics, but what kind of politicians do we want? And I think what we want are politicians who are honest, who have integrity, and have good character. And look, as a Muslim woman, you know, with one toe in public life, I know how extraordinarily difficult this is. The attacks come regularly. They're brutal. They will, they leave you feeling. I might be overstating it for Zarah, but certainly on a personal level, they can leave you feeling broken. I've been tempted to throw in the towel many, many times, but for whatever reason, insanity probably, I've come back. But it is a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing. And we come back, and I come back because these things matter, that our communities matter, and it's important that we try and stay together. And I think what is a testament to Zarah's good character is that she could easily, at any point, decide, you know what, as we see with many politicians, I'm going to sway with the wind. What I'm saying is not being heard, so maybe I just stop saying it, or maybe I just say what people want me to say. Now, whether you agree with what she's saying or not, there is something, in my view, that should be respected in terms of being honest about your position and about how you feel about things, and I think that's important to recognise. Into questions. Michael, I think this might be useful, if you kind of lead the response on this, given kind of your experience. We've got quite a few questions asking about, we've got this real threat of reform coming. We have your party rising, but we also have Attiq Malik and the Greens coming up strong. How do we avoid splitting the vote in the next general election? How do we perhaps work together with others to ensure that we keep reform out come next general election? Here's your mic. Thanks.
Okay.
Is that not working? Is that working now? Yeah. Yeah.
Working. I can just shout.
Are people here?
No.
No.
Can you hear me if I just speak like this?
Yes.
Okay, so let me answer that in a couple of ways. First of all, as I said earlier on, as the pro-Gaza independent group on Lancashire County Council, I sit with 4 Green councillors in what's called Progressive Lancashire as the opposition. And by and large, we work well together. By and large, we work well together. But my experience of the Greens is that the Greens are 2 parties in one, to be perfectly honest with you. There is one of the colleagues on Lancashire County Council, he's fantastically good. I would need to dig really deep to find a difference with him. And if I go over into East Lancs, at the council level, at the district council level, there are a number of Green councillors. They're involved in organising the coaches to every single national demonstration on Palestine. They do all the same things that I do. It's a long way from Lancashire down to London. It's a 6-hour trip each way. They organise each of those. They're on all of those. They're on the streets. They're in the town. They're campaigning. The other 3 councillors come from Lancaster, and early doors I was asking them about Palestine. Oh yeah, we support Palestine. But I've not managed on to a demonstration yet. What, in 18 months? In your own town? And they're in the same party. So Zach represents one wing of the Green Party, but there are others, and there are Green councils where they're in power with Lib Dems, and they're in power with Labour, or they're in power in some places with the Tories, and they make those coalitions. So my own view is that we want to make sure that your party is as strong as possible. We want to go forward with the candidates that we want. But actually locally, at a local level, we might know ourselves. In this ward, we've got the best chance of winning. And in that ward, maybe it is the Greens, so maybe it would be better in our interest at election level to come to a local agreement with them, and they'll stand there and we'll stand there. I would also need to say that my entire history of standing in elections, the Greens have always stood in one seat in Preston, and it's always been against me. Right? So, they do have that other history. But I think we shouldn't be talking about negotiations or pacts with them, certainly ahead of our conference, and certainly too far ahead of any elections, in my view. And can I just also say, I'm really sorry, but if I don't get a train at 5:45 in Leighton Buzzard, which until today I thought was the name of a punk band rather than a town, then I don't get back to Preston until midnight. So in a couple of minutes, I'm going to sneak off the platform and let everybody else answer.
Is there any? Sorry, to respond.
I think, this is very loud. Okay, so I'm going to just tone it down. a lot of people would like me to tone it down, so I'm giving it to you now. I think we have to work together with the Greens because ultimately we have to stop Farage getting the keys to Downing Street, and that has to be our North Star, working with everyone on the left to stop Reform from winning the next general election. But ultimately it's for our members to decide what that looks like, whether that's an electoral alliance, whether that's tactical voting, and obviously the Greens will do that in their respective structures too. I think it's great that Zach Polanski's on the TV, on radio, expressing support for wealth taxes, talking about renationalisation. I think that benefits all of us on the left when we have loads of communicators articulating our politics and proliferating our politics. I think we all benefit from that. But we also have to be honest, because I'll get some people like, why don't you just join the Greens? Why are you doing this? Just like, you know, stop it and let the Greens be the only party of the left. And I just think that is something we have to challenge, because there are a number of issues. There is a democratic deficit in the Greens. You can pass radical policy on anything. You know, think about housing at a Green Party conference and everyone can clap and think that's amazing, but the following week councillors and MPs will go to their council chambers, go to Parliament and do whatever they like because everything is a matter of conscience. That is a democratic deficit, because whatever members pass isn't what their elected representatives have to do. And that to me is not democracy. They also don't believe in severing diplomatic relations with Israel. I think that's non-negotiable, because we're literally witnessing a live stream genocide. This is an apartheid state that doesn't believe in equal rights for Palestinians. That cannot be our party's position, and that is a fundamental difference. And I think crucially, the difference is around anti-imperialism, because it also applies to NATO. On the Green Party's website, it says they think NATO provides security for member states, and we recognise that NATO profits from war and destruction, and it's an imperialist war machine. And in local government, there have been Greens in power in local government that have looked and administered and overseen austerity, where assets have been privatised, public assets have been privatised, housing developments have been blocked, and they have made cuts in local government in Scotland. And the Greens in Scotland are a different party, but they're the Greens. They have given £2 billion of taxpayers' money to wealthy landowners. They've also given taxpayers' money to arms manufacturers like Leonardo. So we are very different from the Greens, and we will work with the Greens where necessary. But this is a socialist party that we're building. This is a democratic party we're building, and we're also very proudly anti-imperialist too. Thank you.
Couple of things for me. Greens, to me, we urgently need a party of the working class, by the working class, for the working class. Not a middle class party who's being currently nice to socialists and working class. But that's what I honestly feel. I think this is a class issue. And I think we need to organise ourselves as a working class. And that's why we need a working class party. And just on the reform, I grew up in this town, as I said earlier. Someone, Rehana, when she introduced me, talked about one love here. And I'll tell you now, I've grown up here all my life. I've got brothers and sisters here who we've grown up together, haven't we? Right? And I much better represent this town in terms of my associations than Tommy does. Because I'll tell you now, the people I know who are into Tommy are quite a few people actually. It's quite a few people, do you know what I mean? It's not a massive amount of people. And they haven't grown either through all of this Elon Musk inspired backing he's getting and all of that. So I'm confident that the one loveness of this town, and that means bringing us together at grassroots level, and just like we have for years, collaborating, working together, loving together, doing our things together. There's more of us than there is of them. And we just need to build that and improve that.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I think that leads us nicely into, again, we had quite a few questions, which I'm going to try and amalgamate into one, but certainly about how do we ensure that we create a political space where everybody is welcome, even when there are certain views or certain ideas that people disagree on, how do we have conversations and bring people along with us rather than shutting people out? Who do we want to start with? Attiq, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I think. Sorry, my bag. I think all of it comes down to conversations, and I think Rehana, what she said, it's all of that, isn't it? About not shutting people out. Quite often, when we bring groups of people together from different backgrounds, different lenses, we are very quick to get offended simply because somebody expressed a different view. And I think respect is a very important ingredient in that. That we have respect for each other, that we respect that people might not agree on everything. And sometimes we can lose sight of the bigger picture. You know, in our, for example, in the Muslim faith, we have many different schools of thought. People disagree on many things. And sometimes that causes a divide between the community. And what we need to remember is, whilst there may be items that we disagree on, there's a lot more that we agree on. And we need to unite on those points and keep the bigger picture in sight. Who is the real enemy here? Who do we need to fight against? And how can we do that if we're not unified?
I'm picking on them at this stage, just so everyone has a chance to.
Well, I won't be too long because I know you want to hear from. I spent 5 or 6 years living in New York and was so moved and delighted by seeing what Zohran Mamdani managed to do. And he did it in part because of his ruthless, brutal message discipline about a message that brings together the people that he wanted to represent. Not by dividing economic issues from anti-imperialism. You know, it's crazy to anyone who's lived in New York City that we're about to have a mayor of New York who refuses to accept the existence of Israel as a Jewish state, and who has suggested he might try to arrest Netanyahu if he visits. So no surrender on those crucial issues of principle, but a relentless focus on uniting precisely the thing that capital, that Trump, that the right wants to divide, which is the class, the working class. And by saying, all of us need lower rents, all of us want to be able to get around this city more easily. It was a campaign about the right to the city should be ours. We should be able to travel around it, live in it, get cheap food in it, care for our children in it. By stressing those issues, Zohran united people who had been told for years that they were enemies. And I think that is a model that we should follow, absolutely.
Just very quickly, I think it's really important that we have a space to disagree with each other. I think that's a sign of democracy, and in the Labour Party, any sign of dissent was shut down and people were expelled, and there was absolutely no space for people to disagree with the leadership. That is not the culture that we are seeking to create here, and I think it's important that we recognise that we are all on our political journey. We are all constantly learning from each other. There will be areas that we disagree, but fundamentally when it comes to organising in a party, you put it to a vote. If it passes, that's the party's position, and then you unite around it. You cannot have constant fights and infighting, but I think that's a symptom of when these debates aren't being held in a public way and they're happening on WhatsApp and they're happening in back rooms. And I think it's important that those differences and those debates are done in an open forum where we then put things to a vote. Ultimately, the language that we use in meetings like this is not the language we use when we knock on doors. Before I got elected, I was a community organiser, and I wasn't knocking on doors asking people if they'd read Karl Marx Volume 1, 2 and 3. I was asking them what are the issues affecting them in their local community, what are they angry about, what would they like to change. And when I worked in areas in the West Midlands, I worked in Wolverhampton, Halesome and Stourbridge. These were Brexit leave areas, and people cared about their local GP surgery facing closure. They cared about a bus route that connected them to the local hospital being scrapped. They cared about the local employer, a college that wasn't a living wage employer. And then you unite people around local campaigns, issues that they don't think are political, but they care about deeply. And then you win on those. and then those people realise that they have power and it can be absolutely electric, and then that local connection is what feeds into a national party. I'm not interested in just an electoral vehicle because that's what all the other parties are, and if you just focus on elections you become completely irrelevant 3 years out of 4. And people will rightly slam the door in your face and tell you to F off if you just care about their vote, but you're not there the rest of the time. So what we're interested in is also organising, building social power, supporting trade unions and increasing their density, being on picket lines, supporting Palestine on the streets through boycott motions in our local councils and so forth, but also working to defeat fascism electorally and winning a socialist agenda at the ballot box. And I think those two things have to be given equal parity, and that has to be the foundations of this party. Thank you.
Whilst you still have the mic, we've got a question asking about the founding conference. We assume it's still going ahead.
Okay, so I have had nothing to do with the founding documents, the regional assemblies, or conference itself. I am of the understanding that conference is going ahead on those dates at the end of November at the ACC, because that's why I've booked train tickets and accommodation in Liverpool, so I'm expecting to be there. I also have an eve of conference rally in Liverpool on the Friday night, and I will be pushing details about that on my social media very soon. So conference, as far as I know, is going ahead. And obviously there's a lot to fight for. There's the elections that I mentioned in my speech around the executive committee of the party. And I think people, after conference, it's not over. That's just one event. We have the elections, and we need to have people, rank and file people elected to fight for democracy. Ultimately, this is not about MPs running the show. This has to be a member-led party, and that fight for maximum member democracy is a long fight, and I hope you all join me in fighting. Thank you.
I think it's probably another one for Zarah, but we brought you here to share our concern and hear about your party. So there are quite a few questions here, and again I'll try to kind of bring them into one about selection of candidates. So how do we ensure that young people are included? How do we ensure that there is like zero tolerance around racism? How do we ensure that we don't have kind of rinse and repeat politicians that jump from one party to the other? How do we ensure kind of a proper vetting in terms of candidates, and how do we ensure that there is space for everybody, as I think Maryam talked about in her speech?
We can't have coronations, we can't have anointments, we can't have personal fiefdoms. The members choose who their candidates are. It is not stitched up by the leadership. So everyone in Luton chooses who their candidates are for local elections, for the general election. And I think that has to be the democratic principle that we enshrine in this party. And that's why open selections is a key principle. That's why mandatory reselection is a key principle. And if your elected representatives, once elected, stray from the mandate that you've given them, then you must be able to recall them. So you have to win the support of your membership, otherwise you are not a candidate. It is as simple as that.
I think this will be the final question. Again, there are quite a few comments and questions about concerns around the very public infighting in terms of your party leadership and extended leadership. How do we instill faith? How do we, I'm sorry, let me just read this. How do we instill faith? How do we encourage people to join your party in the context of all of this kind of infighting? And the word here is bickering, so I'll use that.
I think it's been deeply regrettable what we've seen happen over the past few months, and I've always said that for my part in that, I am really sorry, because while travelling to over 30 events, talking to thousands of people in Scotland, Wales and across the country, understand the importance of what we're building here. As a brown woman, as a South Asian woman, as a Muslim woman, the threat of a fascist government isn't an intellectual exercise, it's something that I feel very deeply, viscerally, and so I have left the Labour Party recognising what the Labour Party is complicit in and how it's rolling the red carpet for a Nigel Farage government. So I am deeply committed to building a party that wins materially for our working class communities, and gives hope, because I feel like people look at politicians and they look at political parties across the board and they just think you're in it for yourself. So my motivation in being involved in this entire process has always been not to recreate the shit show of mainstream politics, and that also includes the culture. And right from the outset, I've always been pushing for gender balance committees. I've always been pushing for the movement to be represented in leading this party, in organising its conference, and there has been so much pushback to that, having gender balance committees, having the movement represented, and not just MPs leading this process. And being committed to member democracy is why we have seen some of that infighting, because some people think because of being an MP that gives them the automatic right to represent the movement. As someone who's come through social movements, as someone who's come through the Palestine movement, as someone who's organised on deaths in police custody, the prevent agenda, mental health and everything else, that is unacceptable to me, because this is for the movement, it's not for MPs, and it's definitely not to embellish their CVs. So this has been about democracy, and in response to that, I've been smeared, I've been intimidated, I've received legal threats, I've been defamed, I've been sabotaged just before going on question time, and so this has been incredibly difficult, but this is so important. And I'm from an area, Birmingham, called Owls, and we don't back down from a fight, so they're messing with the wrong person. Thank you.
We're going to close with that. Thank you very much, Zarah. Thank you to all of our panellists for coming. I think it's been really helpful. In us, I think being able to see each other, I think differently, being able to see how many shared concerns we have, to be able to see that all of us, that while there might be some small differences, that we're all committed to a much a better vision of the future, where each and every one of us is able to thrive and our communities are able to flourish, and I think that's really important. We've been able to hear a little bit about what your party has to offer, about Zarah's vision for it, and I hope Zarah has also been able to hear from us in terms of what kind of space that we would, and how we want politics to change and how we create spaces that are inclusive for everybody. So I hope that was as helpful for all of you as it has been for me. I understand that there is a meeting on Tuesday at 7:30 at Marsh House to carry on the conversation around organising, speak to Glenn, speak to Attiq. I think they can give you a bit more information afterwards. But thank you all very much for joining us. Really appreciate everybody turning out, and I hope this was helpful for you. Thank you.